Hello! Hope you guys are all okay and all good. Welcome to another video. My name is George Lester. For those of you who don't know, feel free to subscribe down below. If you're not already, please feel free to ignore the spot on my forehead. And today, I'm going to be talking to you about The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy by Mackenzi Lee. Whew! Mouthful. I hope you guys are all okay and all good and having a good week and whatnot. Welcome to another video. I actually have followed through on the vague promise that I made in that weird welcome back kind of video where I said I would start making more videos, and there was a book that I wanted to talk about. So that book is The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy, as I already mentioned. This is the sequel to The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, which was one of my most favouriteest books that I read last year. I listened to the audiobook of that, and I also listened to the audiobook of this, which I listened to via a website called Scribed, an app called Scribed, which is a subscription service much like Audible, but also has ebooks on it and sheet music and documents and all sorts of business. But the reason that I'm using that service at the moment is because of the sheet music aspect. I need sheet music for school, and it's a good place to get sheet music. And also they've got a bunch of audiobooks that Audible just don't have. So that's kind of a cool perk that they have, I guess, that they have more things. And because it's a subscription service, it's more like a library, so you sort of borrow the titles, and there's also like library apps you could use for that, but you sort of borrow the titles and listen to them rather than downloading and keeping them forever, if that makes any sort of sense. So I listened to The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy over the last couple of weeks and thoroughly enjoyed it. A little bit about what it's about. It is set a year after the events of The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, and follows the adventures of Felicity Montague, who is Monty's sister. Felicity wants to be a doctor. She's been reading about it for her whole life. Instead of reading the stuffy romance novels that her mum's been giving her, she's been like hiding medicine books and medical papers within these books, so it looks like she's reading those when actually she's reading about medical papers and learning about medicine. She wants to study it and become a doctor, but in the time that she lives, it is not considered proper for a woman to be a doctor. But Felicity will not be deterred by such things, and she is absolutely 100% determined to become a doctor, no matter what it takes, even if she has to travel across the ocean to do it. This may have spoilers in it. If you have not read this book, feel free to not, and I'm going to give you the brief version now. This book is fantastic, so feel free to click off this video and go and read the book and then come back and watch this video. The book is great. I really think you'll enjoy it, especially if you love Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. If you haven't read either of them, ooh, you're in for a treat, so go and read both. You can go and check out my review for The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue in the description box below as well, if you are so inclined. Much like The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, this is an absolute romp. It's really funny, it's really quite light, but has its serious moments. It has effortless diversity in it, which I think is what I enjoyed so much about the book, and you only really notice it when you decide to notice it, if that makes sense. Felicity Montague is asexual. It's not explicitly said in the book in those terms, but it is said in so many words, and I do believe it has been confirmed by the author that Felicity is asexual. She refuses a marriage proposal from a kindly Edinburgh baker at the beginning of the book, and goes on to explain the way that she feels with regards to romantic entanglement to the other people in the book, including her brother, and I do believe she explains it to Sim as well as Joanna as well. So there's that part of it that I really love. The fact this has a character who is ace in it, which is not something that I read about terribly often, so that was quite exciting for me. I knew going into it that Felicity was ace. It was something that I think I'd read up on beforehand, and I can remember seeing a lot of things online where it's like, do not let this book flop, because books like this don't come around very often. So with that in mind, we need to support the ones that are there. Also, it's bloody fantastic, so I mean, say what you want about whether, I mean, obviously it's an important book and people need to support it and blah blah blah, but also it's bloody brilliant and you should read it for that reason too. The fact that it has an ace main character, which is something that you don't see very often, is a bonus to the fact that this is a bloody fantastic book. There are a multitude of things I loved about this book apart from that diversity part of it. I really enjoyed spending more time with Felicity Montague. She's a fantastic character. She was fantastic in The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. So when it was announced, I don't know whether it was announced before I read it or after I read it, but I think I was very excited when I found out that the next book was going to be following her story, because while I loved Monty and Percy's relationship in The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, and while I don't think by any stretch their story has ended, if Mackenzi Lee wants to write another thing with them in it, I would be very happy to read it. It was nice that it was going to be a companion novel and something where we can hang out with Felicity more, because she was brilliant, and I think it's a wise move, because she was like a fan. I feel like she was a fan favourite character. I loved her, and it was so nice to kind of see her grow and see her develop in this book. It was also really lovely seeing Monty and Percy's relationship develop in this book too. It was kind of seeing one, it was seeing their relationship through Felicity's eyes, which was really, really nice and very amusing. And it was also seeing the growth that they had had from book 1 to now, which was really lovely and really sweet. And just one of those things where it's like, they didn't make Mackenzi Lee didn't make a big deal out of it. It wasn't like a big showy thing, but it was there and it was a constant and it was sweet and it was just a nice thing to have in the book, really. I really enjoyed that part of it and enjoyed seeing them a bit more. Even though this was Felicity's story, I thoroughly enjoyed that. I loved Joanna and I loved Sim. I loved the little trio that they had together. I loved how Joanna developed over the course of the book. I think what I liked about Joanna is that she did not align herself with with Felicity's way of thinking in its entirety. Joanna loved pretty things. She loves wearing her dresses. She loves looking nice and going to parties. But also she's a very intelligent woman and she loves discovering things as well. And it was like, while Felicity's thinking is, I am this and not this, Joanna's thinking was, I can be both of these things. And that was really, really fun. And it was the same with Sim as well. Sim challenged her thinking too, and I loved that all three of these women in this book were not as you would originally see them, if that makes sense. So they are so Felicity, obviously we know that she is not preparing to be a governess like her mother wanted her to. We found that out in book 1. And Joanna and Sim, they appear in a particular way at the beginning of the book and then they develop as the book goes on, and it's like this, like, don't judge a book by its cover type of situation, which is really, really fun to read, and really, really fun to get to know them. I honestly thought, as I was listening to the audiobook, that Joanna was going to be some kind of villain in this book, which made it all the more fun when we were getting to know her more and more. So yeah, that was really, really fun for me. The plot was really fantastic. It was well fleshed out. The world was really well built. The medical parts of it seemed incredibly well researched to the point where they were actually occasionally quite gruesome, but I wasn't really fast on that. It was a swashbuckling, super fun adventure story that featured themes of sexuality and sexism, and it was really fun and funny, and I feel like, and it's possible that I'm throwing this out there in like a very willy-nilly way and I could get some hate for this, but if you do know more books that are like this, feel free to let me know down below. I've not read anything like this before, and The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. Any historical YA that I've read has often felt, not dry, that's the wrong word, but it's not had this level of like comedy and lightness to it. So if you have more things like that, feel free to comment them down below. I would really love to hear any recommendations that you have. But I've not read anything like this before. So for me, it was kind of, with this and Gentleman's Guide, it was something new and fresh and a bit interesting. I'm sorry if this was a bit spoilery. I did say at the beginning, so hopefully you're not mad at me or anything. But I thoroughly enjoyed this book, and I'm very happy that it was kind of the book that's hopefully going to get me back into reading, because I started reading something else. I've started listening to something else off the back of this. So that's really exciting. I kind of hope Mackenzi Lee writes something more in this world. I don't know whether that would be something from Percy's perspective or something that's Monty and Felicity in alternating perspectives. I don't know. I will take anything. Basically, I'm excited for whatever Mackenzi Lee writes next. I think she's brilliant. So yes, that's the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you did, feel free to put a like on it and leave a comment down below telling me what you thought of the book. I would love to start a conversation about it. I love each and every one of your faces, and I will speak to you whenever I can. Yeah. Bye!